This year's Electronic Entertainment Expo, or E3, brought on an incredible wave of anticipation. With new consoles finally announced from Sony and Microsoft, their offerings would set the stage for the console wars of the next generation. So how did they fare in presenting themselves? What are we looking forward to the most? Listen as we break down as much as we can all the news from the major players and give our opinions on how we think they shape themselves up for the future, right here on Downloadable Content. Welcome to Downloadable Content. I'm Brian, and with me we have Ben.
Hello, everybody.
Shanna.
Hi.
And we may have a Ron and a Doug at some point during this episode. They've expressed some interest, and then real life happened, and so they may jump in and out, depending on when they're available. Ben, welcome back. It has been a hell of a long time, actually, since you've been on.
Being exiled to the other side of the country has a tendency to cut into your free time a little bit.
A little bit, yes. And so yeah, we are going to be talking about E3, now that we've had a week and a half or so to digest all of the news and information and new news that has come out in the last few days regarding Microsoft. So we're actually going to try to discuss the goings-on at E3 and not spend all episode ranting about Microsoft, which is what we did a few episodes ago. So
They just make it so easy.
I know, they do make it so easy. It's very easy for... It's like, Microsoft, will you stop shooting yourself in the face?
Apparently not.
Apparently not. So, this E3 had a lot more anticipation behind it than last year's E3. Everyone was hoping that Sony and Microsoft would announce new consoles. They didn't. Everybody left the convention with blue balls. And now, finally, the two have delivered. Meanwhile, Nintendo's going, guys,
I've been here. Hello.
Hello. So, we're going to start the E3 discussion. We're going to start with Microsoft. We might as well. You know, we're going to go in the order in which they presented at E3. We're also going to get whatever ranting out of the way first.
Might as well just sweep this clean. All right.
Might as well just get it off our chests right off
the Band-Aid.
Right off the bat. Now, a couple episodes ago was called the State of the Eighth Generation. The panel and I, we discussed things that we hope to see with the Xbox One, because we recorded the episode and we released the episode right after Xbox One had been revealed, had been announced. And the things that we were hoping, even though Microsoft had just hanged itself, we were hoping that at least at E3 they were going to put their emphasis on games. And by and large, from what I saw the press conference, it seems like they did that. They spent the bulk of their press conference actually on the games themselves. I think
that's very true.
I think most, if not all of them, were Xbox One exclusives. Well, most of them. I'm looking at my list now. They started off showing off a trailer for Metal Gear Solid 5, and I'm like, wait a minute.
I was wondering, like, when I saw that, I was like, oh, Brian's going to be so excited.
Well, I have, the current... At first, I'm looking at it, I'm like, wait a minute, Metal Gear Solid 5, is it next gen? Wait a minute. Like, no.
Yeah, they did a spectacular job of showing a lot and not actually telling you anything, so that was really confusing, because at no point did they started off the whole show with, this is all Xbox 360 stuff, but they start literally the first thing with Metal Gear Solid 5, and so you're saying, well, is this also Xbox 360 stuff, or is this Xbox One? And I don't know if you noticed, but I also loved how much they let Kojima talk about the game, which is to say not at all.
Well, yes.
It was very vague. It was just like they just opened the show with it, and then like, you know, he didn't really say much, and then that was kind of just it. And I was like, huh, what? Oh, okay.
And I mean, I get, like, that's a really strong statement, especially an opening one, to start with that game of all things. And I thought it was well done how they were saying, like, because while we'd always known that they were saying they were going to do a 360 version, I think that was the first time that we ever actually had Metal Gear associated at a Microsoft event.
Yeah, it had always been pretty much a Sony thing.
Yeah. Or I think the one other time we'd seen Kojima at a Microsoft event was when they were talking about Metal Gear Rising. So, you know, that was understandably a big thing for them. But at the same time, I thought it was just really... The big message I got from everything Microsoft did is, we don't know how to present. We've got stuff, we don't know how to say it. And I think that kind of summed up here. Like, oh, look, we've got this cool trailer. What system is it for? It's a cool trailer. But what system is it for? It's for our system. Which system? Ours.
That was kind of the overall vibe, and then they actually started showing Xbox One games, and they showed some games here. I'll just list them here. They showed a game called Rise, which at first I looked at it, I'm like, Rice? No, that can't be right.
Yeah, it's fun spelling.
Yes, Capcom's offering Dead Rising 3. The obligatory racing game, the Forza series.
With the premiere of the giant Forza car that just popped out of the bottom of the floor.
It's like, hey,
that was...
kind of felt like a little Price is Right, you know?
Seriously, think about how much that stunt was just completely unnecessary.
It was totally unnecessary. I was like, because at first I see it and I'm like, okay, is this going to be like a Dave & Buster's thing? Like, is that car going to be in, like, you know, like, if there are any left, arcades or anything like that? And I was just like, no, just look at this shiny car.
Well,
Isn't it shiny?
I saw that and I kind of waited for Rod Roddy's Ghost to just come out and be like, a new car! But
well, here's my real problem with it. If you put something like that front and center next to the thing that you have that's imitating it, that's clearly going to be inferior, all you are doing is inviting comparison. All everybody's going to look at, like, if you just showed them the digital car, they'd be like, hey, that's a really cool looking digital car. If you show them the actual car and then the digital car, they're going to look at all the flaws in the digital car that aren't there on the actual car.
I think they did that on purpose, though, because they did make a big point of saying, like, we're, you know, and this is when they were starting to take a few stabs at Sony. It's like, it's not about polygon count. I think this was during this portion, but it was all about, like, look at the way the light reflects off the car, and look at the way that the paint job looks, and blah, blah, blah. So I guess that was probably their point in doing it, but it still seemed very hammy to just have this car coming up with all this steam, like, but we're looking at a video game. Like, why do we care?
Yeah. It's like, look, we're nerds. We don't drive actual cars. You should know this. Come on.
I mean,
we hate sunlight.
It's like, we are never going to be able to afford a car like this in our lifetime.
We can barely afford your console. Why would you think we can buy it?
Exactly.
That's where my money is going. I'll hang on to my O2 Civic. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I'm going to hold on to my Toyota Avalon until it cannot move anymore. 180,000 miles. And
counting.
And counting, yes. The one game I saw that tickled the nostalgia sense a bit was Killer Instinct.
Oh, God, because of the trailer? That was the most 90s trailer I've ever seen in my life.
I know.
I mean, can we just remember that it has been 20 years since Rare has released a fighting game, and that most of the people that were at Rare at that point are not at Rare now, so there's no possible way this can end badly?
Like I said, I saw the trailer, and it tickled the nostalgia sense. It's not enough for me to plunk down $500.
Yeah.
On a system, on a system that looks like a Laserdisc player, as opposed to a...
It could very well end up being a good game, but I just feel like there should be some reservation about reviving a 20-year dead franchise just for the sake of reviving a 20-year dead franchise. Although I am glad to see that Microsoft is letting Rare make the games that they used to make instead of Banjo-Kazooie nuts and bolts.
Well, yes, there is that.
Although, to be fair, we don't know. This could be Killer Instinct meets Farmville. You know, they haven't actually officially announced too much about the game yet.
All right, just that, hey, this exists. And,
It's a thing.
It's a thing.
It exists. But yeah, that trailer just really got me. Like, I was really half expecting it to end with, "What are you waiting for? Sega CD to make one?" Like, it was like, it was such a dated trailer. I couldn't handle it. But was Killer Instinct that popular? I honestly don't even remember it.
Killer Instinct kind of has a bit of a cult following. It doesn't have the popularity of Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter or Soul Calibur. It doesn't have, that type of fan base. Killer Instinct is kind of like Guilty Gear in that sense.
It reminded me of Altered Beast a bit. Like,
okay,
like that?
Yes.
I mean, the thing to remember is we are talking about a franchise that's been dead for 20 years. So, I mean, you probably figure, I think they made like 2 or 3 games in the series, and then they stopped, and people kind of said, hey, I wonder if they're going to make another one. And then, hey, I wonder if they're going to make another one. And, after a couple of years in this and they didn't, people were sort of like, man, Rare used to make great games, like Killer Instinct. So instead of making a great game like Killer Instinct, they're just going to make another Killer Instinct with a new team.
Although, usually when I think of Rare, though, I think of Donkey Kong Country. But
sure,
that's my association with them. So...
Shanna, it was their Super Nintendo heyday, if you really want to think about it that way. That's when the last time a Killer Instinct, or around then is the last time a Killer Instinct game came out.
Yes.
Maybe N64.
Yep. Some other games they showed off Sunset Overdrive.
That one piqued my interest. I thought that looked pretty cool.
That looked a little cool. Then we have The Witcher 3, which is multi-platform.
Yeah.
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 They trotted out the next Battlefield game. I'm like, oh, alright, yay.
Shoot things.
I'm like, yay, this will be another one that sells a jillion copies, because that's what makes money, apparently.
I mean, Call of Duty, Modern Warfare, Killzone, Gears of War 4, I don't know. I get them all mashed up, I can't tell.
Halo.
Yeah.
Halo at least stands out a little bit. The other ones just run together. I don't know. Maybe it's just not my thing.
I lost some interest. They were talking about support for the Kinect and the Smart Glass, and because I don't own Kinect for my 360, I was just kind of like, yes, whatever. You've made this thing for the Xbox One. You've made it HAL, is what you've done with it. It's
yeah, we're getting. Out. I think if we can talk about the Kinect for a second, I think it raises an interesting point of we're getting to a point in society where we're going to need to start having some interesting questions answered about privacy versus, technological convenience. And I don't want to turn this podcast into just a 2-hour discussion about that, because it could easily go beyond that.
Oh, yes.
But I think that, and obviously we'll talk more about the DRM stuff and everything in a bit, but with everything Microsoft was trying to do, there is, and I don't want to sound like I'm defending them at all, because I disagree with just about everything that they've been doing, but I think they were trying to maybe push the envelope a little bit, and they might have just underestimated how ready people were for some of that stuff. But I think it is interesting that we are going to have to start having these conversations about what constitutes a household appliance and what constitutes invasion of privacy.
Well, yes, especially one further point to add that, especially with the recent news that of the whole NSA thing.
Prism.
Yeah, the spying scandal thing, which I don't know why it shocked everybody. I mean, we have the Patriot Act, but anyway.
Yeah.
But anyway. Yeah, the whole thing about, the Kinect always being on and, listening to what you say, and yeah, I'm waiting for Microsoft to give it a voice, and yeah, you're hurting me. You're waiting me. You're hurting me, Dave.
If I buy one, the first thing I'm going to say is, if I buy one, the first thing I'm going to say to it is, Xbox, open the pod bay doors.
And the last thing people need is to have a Kinect watching them while they beat off. It's
I mean, these were all privacy concerns that were raised when the first one was available, but their way of assuaging people there was you can unplug it, you can disconnect it, you can turn it off. Whereas here, it's like, well, you can turn it off, but if you unplug it from the system's not going to work. So then why can I turn it off? How do I know it's actually off?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember somebody said, "Well, just unplug just unplug the Xbox One."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Well, all right, you can do that, or you can put a towel over it."
Or you could buy a PlayStation 4.
Or you could or if you were
or
that
a Wii U.
or a Wii U, or if you're that Microsoft spokesman, what if we don't have an internet connection? No, buy a 360.
Yeah, that's part of what rubbed me so the wrong way. It wasn't like, guys, we understand your concerns and we're really working on it. It's, no, this is how our system works. Tough. Deal with it.
Yeah, they were a bit heavy-handed in that regard. We'll jump back to this whole mess in a minute, but I just want to bring up that they closed the press conference with a game called Titanfall, which looks like a mashup of all of the shooter games.
You mean more shooter games? Microsoft and first-person shooters? Shock of all shocks.
I know.
Never have guessed.
And then that's another multi-platform game. But they, compared to the other press conferences, compared to the other offerings by some of the other major players, Microsoft had the smallest showing. I didn't see any indie games.
That's a good point. Well,
there's potentially a reason for that. There's a lot of uproar in the indie community that Microsoft is not at all good for them, for their development, and I mean, they used to be. I mean, you look at the 360 and the Xbox Live Arcade, they used to be just fantastic for indie titles, but there was a recent, I don't know if either one of you heard about the whole issue with the game Fez and its creator Phil Fish.
No, what happened?
There was the long and short of it is that they put out the game and they noticed that there was a bug that they put out in a patch that they were trying to issue. So they wanted to reissue another patch, and it would have cost them over $10,000 just to reissue the second patch to fix the problems from the first place. Now, the problem is that it affected such a small number of users, and that they are such a small studio that they literally could not afford to put out this new patch. And the problem that a lot of people had with it is, the reason Microsoft charges so much is, first of all, because they can, but also because they claim they put the whole thing through this QA process. So if they put this patch through a QA process and it passed everybody's testing and then they still put it out and there was actually a problem, their feeling was, well, Microsoft should, kind of work with them a little bit on the pricing. And Microsoft claimed they were willing to, but that just didn't happen. So it became this whole thing, and then the creator of Fez was asked, he says he's working on another title, and they said, well, where are you looking to put it? He said, not on Xbox, because Microsoft apparently doesn't allow people. You have to have a publisher. There are all these crazy rules that they have for people who want to put out downloadable games, and it really defeats the purpose of being able to be a small studio doing your own work and putting out a game when you have to go out and get a publisher, you have to go out and get people who are going to try and influence how you make the game and do all these other things, when that could, compromise the game you're trying to make. So there's this whole thing now where Microsoft went from being the place that indie developers wanted to go, and now it's really more Sony who's taking the lead in that. Because Nintendo has some other rules too, but I don't think they're as bad as Microsoft.
No, they're not. And I just in the last issue of Game Informer, there was an article specifically about this, how indie developers are leaving Microsoft in droves because, as you said, it's true. Microsoft requires that indie games have a publisher. Everything has to be done through Microsoft. Microsoft releases the game on their terms. All the marketing is done everything is done on Microsoft's terms.
Sorry, go ahead.
A lot of the control is taken out of the developer's hand.
And it's not even just for indie games, because do you guys know about the Ubisoft game Rayman Legends that was supposed to come out for the Wii U?
No, that was going to happen?
It was actually initially a Wii U exclusive. And then what happened was, for whatever reason, let's assume for a second that Ubisoft was concerned that there weren't enough Wii U systems being sold. So they wanted to put it multi-platform, which is understandable. Not a strong showing, but I can understand that. They went to Microsoft and Sony and said, we want to develop this for your system. Microsoft has a requirement that if a game is coming out on multiple platforms, you are not allowed to release it on any platform before theirs if it's in development at the same time. So what that meant was Ubisoft had to go from releasing this as a Wii U launch title to delaying it for about a year so that they could make an Xbox 360 version.
Oh, that's
so Wii U owners kind of got screwed over a little bit, and it also really screws Nintendo because a lot of people who may have bought a Wii U for that game said, well, I already have a PS3, I already have an Xbox. Now I can just get this game for a system I already have. It's no longer a point in the Wii U's favor.
So yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of restrictions on indie developers now, and so they're leaving Microsoft in droves. And so I saw no indie games at all presented at the Microsoft press conference, whereas Sony and Nintendo had a bunch of them. So I think that may hurt Microsoft a bit. Not to mention the fact that before the stunning reversal a few days ago, they were dead set on those pesky DRM policies that everyone was flaying them alive for. And then they announced the release. It'll be in November for $500. And I don't know about you, but I don't have that money to sling around.
Most people don't.
Most people don't. I mean,
let's be honest, most gamers don't.
Microsoft was going about this in such a way that they basically said to the gaming community, you're going to want this system badly enough anyway, and you're going to shell out the money because our system is just that good.
I'm reminded of Ken Kutaragi a couple of years ago talking about the PlayStation 3 and saying, people will look at it and think, I want to work more hours to buy one.
Yes, and you told me a few days ago, Ben, you're like, Microsoft is this generation's Sony, isn't it? Yes. They
really seem. I mean, you look at how Sony approached the PlayStation 3 versus the PlayStation 4, and how Microsoft approached the Xbox 360 versus the Xbox One, and it does seem to me that they've pretty much just flip-flopped.
You're absolutely right. Like, I found myself being shocked by watching both of their conferences and being like, I was already dead set like, Sony's going to be like the bully, and they're going to sit here and hawk this, this box with a lot of unnecessary, trinkets and bells and whistles, and expect people to shell out a high price. And, Microsoft is going to give us another good, stable, gaming machine with some extra perks. And I was kind of surprised when I was like, I'm leaning more towards my money would go towards a PS4.
And then, of course, Microsoft got flayed alive in the gaming media and on social media. And
not even just our media, like general media too, like general more technology websites like CNET and other places were looking at this and saying, this doesn't really seem to be something that people are at all interested in or willing to cooperate with.
Their initial stance on used games, that you're only going to be allowed to share it X number of times with people on your Xbox Live friends list that have been there for 30 days, and only used games will only be allowed on the console if the publisher allows this game to be sold secondhand. And I'm like, whoa.
I mean, it comes down to, I mean, and again, I'm not apologizing for them because I disagree with a lot of their old decisions, but I think they could have actually possibly gone through with this if they'd just been clear. They didn't seem to have anything really set in stone. It felt like my whole perception of the entire situation is that this is something that came down from like Steve Ballmer or somebody way up top and was like, and they had a rough general idea of how this always connected system was going to work and how used game sales were going to work and so on and so forth. And they announced it at the May event, which, by the way, they made a comment somewhere where they said something like, well, we announced it at the May event and then we announced it again at E3 because we had to wait for E3 to see what the gaming public thought of it. No, you didn't. The gaming public watched the first event They were well aware of what you were doing, but it seemed to me that somebody just from up top had this half-baked idea, said we're going to make this a marquee thing, we're going to make this all across the board, and everybody had to defend it and staunchly defend it because they knew it was just what their boss wanted. And then finally, after weeks of lobbying against this, they finally managed to convince whoever it was to change their mind. So now they can all come out and well, we're going to have to take out all these cool features. Well, we're going to have to remove this. Well, guys, no, you're not. I just think that there was a lot of confusion with it from the beginning. Nobody really had a clear idea of what they were supposed to be doing, how things were going to work. All of this confusion amongst the executives sowed unrest amongst the gamers, and it just... Did they potentially have some cool features? Yeah, possibly, but if you can't sell your own people on something, you're not going to be able to sell anybody else on it. So I think that was really where a lot of the negativity came from.
I mean, obviously there are still people who are going to buy the system no matter what.
Yeah.
And, well, you just go ahead and enjoy. I will probably be skipping the Xbox One, but who knows? I mean, I've always maintained that the only time I buy a console is when there's enough of a library of games I'm interested in, and that's when I go get it. I've only been a 360 owner for a year and a half, so.
Can I just... Something I wanted to raise, getting back to the DRM for just a half second. Did anybody else notice that there seemed to be a lot more support for the DRM the second they reversed their stance on it than there was in the entire month and a half when they had it out there? Because, like, the minute they changed course, I saw all of these people complaining about how the fact that, you know, we just crippled the Xbox One. We just made it so much worse. All this other stuff. And I'm like, wait, where were you guys 5 minutes ago?
I did notice a little bit of an uptick in that. And I'm just like, more along the lines of, oh, Microsoft just shot innovation in the foot. All these new features. Microsoft was going to push the envelope, and now they've caved. Yada yada.
You people killed this. Blah blah blah. I'm like, wait, really? You were okay? If you were okay with all this, why didn't we hear from you 5 minutes ago? So I thought that was really interesting how there was, as somebody put it, instant nostalgia for the Xbox One's original design the minute it was no longer the Xbox One's original design.
Oh well.
Yeah.
So we're all going to move on from Microsoft because, you know, on the whole, just last thought on Microsoft, I wasn't all that impressed. I really wasn't. I mean, the games didn't really, you know, intrigue me. And, yeah.
I mean, there were interesting games, but there was nothing that... Like, I don't feel like there was anything that people got insanely excited over.
Yeah,
it was just kind of like, okay, that's coming out, all right. It's like, you know, it's almost like dealing with the film industry. It's like there's so much sequels, and, you know, it's like, been there, done that, you know.
What also gets me is the games that I want to play that they showed off are either going to be on this console generation, which means I have no incentive to buy a new piece of hardware, or are going to be also available on the PlayStation 4, which means I still have time to choose which one I'd prefer to actually invest in. And with the fact that Sony's is $100 cheaper and doesn't include the Kinect, which I would never use, why would I want to spend more money on features that I don't find are necessary? Like, even if you said that they're even, you know, if you say the Kinect costs $100, okay, well, why would I force myself to pay for something that I'm not going to want?
It's not necessary.
Exactly, that I don't deem as necessary.
Then, you know, be that as it may, we're going to move on to the next publisher. EA went after Microsoft. And, you know, usually when everybody hears the word EA, it's usually an immediate groan.
Hey, EA is behind Sims. That makes me happy. That's one thing they haven't messed up yet.
Well, I heard the next version of Sims is going to take a lot of cues from the recent SimCity. It's going to be always online. The servers are never going to go down because we all know that EA's servers never go down. And the game's just going to be great.
Oh, yes. Amazing. Just absolutely.
Wait, it's going to be only online, so it's
No, I'm messing with you. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, that would just make it Second Life.
Yeah. Which I think EA would probably have gone for, but that's a different...
Yeah, no. EA, every game that they showed at their conference are to be for PS4 and Xbox One only. They did not show any Wii U titles at their press conference. So Nintendo once again over there. Hey guys,
I mean, EA said it's a numbers game, and they're not. It's the catch-22. We're going to develop more games for you when you sell more systems, or we can sell more systems if you develop more games for us. I mean, this is why does Nintendo have struggles with third-party developers? Because people say that third-party stuff doesn't sell in their systems because the only good games that come out for their systems are made by Nintendo because the third-party developers don't want to support Nintendo because they don't think they have the install base. I mean, it's so cyclical. It's really funny.
Yes, it is. So among the games that EA showed off, they showed off another Plants vs. Zombies. This one's called Garden Warfare.
See, I like this because even if they're taking, it's at least a unique spin on the series.
Yes,
it's doing something different with something familiar, and I like that. And it's hard to do that, but it's when it's done well, it can actually be exciting and can be fun.
It's a definite risk, but there's such a built-in fan base to Plants vs. Zombies that and they can chance taking the risk, and it may turn out to be completely awesome.
Well, EA is also a big enough publisher where they could put out a dozen flops and still be fine.
Yeah, they've got their go-to
true.
bread and butter series.
EA to video games is like Tor books in the literary world. They'll just publish anything.
Yeah.
But Plants vs. Zombies looked a bit cute. Peggle 2.
That guy was way too excited.
Let's see. We mentioned Titanfall. They had brief mentions of Star Wars Battlefront and Need for Speed Rivals.
I thought Star Wars was a really cool introduction just because of how it was done, and there was so much concern about what they were going to do with the franchise, and you could tell that they threw that together really quickly, and that's obviously not going to be representative of real gameplay. But at the same time, the fact that it was like this mysterious thing, and then it just sort of slowly builds, and you kind of very subtly realize what you're actually looking at, I thought was really just a great trailer for them to show off.
I thought so. Then they released then they showed the one game that I'm looking forward to, Dragon Age 3. I've just started the first Dragon Age Origins, and I'm loving the hell out of it so far. So, I was like, "Ooh, you look cool."
I've heard that game's amazing. So, I haven't played Dragon Age yet, but even I'm looking forward to Dragon Age 3.
I am enjoying Dragon Age Origins. It's quite fun. Then, of course, no EA conference can be complete without a litany of their sports titles.
Unfortunately, not the one I wanted to see, which was MVP baseball, but oh well.
Oh well. NBA Live 14, Madden NFL 25, FIFA, and EA Sports UFC.
Madden's just not the same without actual John Madden.
Yeah, but he hasn't been involved in the franchise in how long?
No, I know. I mean, I know it's been a long time, but it's still just I would love to see, just for old time's sake, the next Madden game come out and have his big fat face, right there on the box art.
Boom!
I mean, why would he? He's clearly making enough money as it is. They're just using his name.
I know, and he's all retired and whatnot, but, there would just be something so special about that, and...
I feel like if they were going to be able to do that, they would have done it for 25.
Yeah, that's true, since it is,
25.
It is 25.
Yeah.
Have him on the cover just eating 25 footballs.
Yeah. So can we touch on one other game from EA for a second, which was Mirror's Edge?
Yes. Go ahead.
I really like the original Mirror's Edge. Well, that's the thing. It's not Mirror's Edge 2. They said it's a reboot. And that's where I have a problem. That's part of why the art style looked different and things. It's you're rebooting a game that had one entry in the franchise. I feel like at that point, the problem what I have with that, and other games have done it well occasionally, is at that point you're literally saying, I'm just going to retell you the same story you've already been told, and maybe change a couple of other things. And I'm like, that's what a sequel is there for. I don't get why you have to go through the hype of calling it a reboot.
Yeah, and isn't Mirror's Edge 1 pretty recent?
Yeah.
Yeah, not too old.
I don't understand that either, to be honest. Like, I can understand if you're going to reboot something that came out on, like, Super Nintendo or
Sure.
PlayStation 1, like, something that you can reboot it, but, you know, it's just getting a graphical upgrade. And I'm not talking about something that's like an HD remix that's like, oh, this game came out 5 years ago and now we're putting it in HD, because I'm sorry, that's BS. But, like, if you're rebooting a game that, like, literally could not be told the same way, you know, 15, 20 years ago as it could be now, then it makes sense. But isn't Mirror's Edge, like, less than 5 years old? I mean...
It was 2008. It was so early in this console generation's lifespan.
Yeah, so, like...
So why are you rebooting a game that in which its only entry was released this generation?
Exactly. That's my point. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm really glad that it actually got a sequel, because there was a lot of concern that it wouldn't, because of how... I don't know how well the first game sold and was received. It was pretty well received and sold pretty well, but I mean, again, that's the kind of thing like, okay, well, we made some mistakes with the first game, but it still did well enough to warrant a sequel. Let's actually make a sequel. Let's improve upon stuff. Let's not... I don't know. It just seemed really strange to me.
And that's what generally is done with sequels. You improve upon, but you're not just... Like, it's almost like laziness. Yeah. You're not just fishing out the same story and, like, you know, making edits. It's out there already.
Right. I mean, and I've seen quote-unquote sequel reboots, whatever you want to call them, actually done well. The one example I can really think of that did this well was Jet Set Radio to Jet Set Radio Future. You know, Future was technically a reboot. They didn't really change the art style. They kind of redid the story, but they really focused on making the game more fun and more approachable. And I'm like, okay, you could have easily just actually called this a sequel and been done with it, but right. I'm fine that you know, decided to call it a reboot and redo the story. But it's really hard to get done, because if you're rebooting something, you're saying, I can tell this story better. And it's not like Mirror's Edge had an incredibly deep story to begin with. So I don't know why they think they're going to be able to do so much better, if that makes sense, from that perspective.
Not having played the first Mirror's Edge, I'm not familiar with the gameplay or the story at all, but... yeah.
I mean, I just know that, I mean, I haven't played it either, but from what I saw from the first one, it was a beautiful game from what I could see. Like, I don't see why it would have needed a reboot, but...
And I mean, the idea of first-person free-running was so unique when it was first introduced that I think there was a little bit more hype than was expected. But yeah,
it was basically, it was like parkour mechanics, right? It was kind of like...
Yeah, just in first person.
Mm-hmm.
So it was fun, but yeah, we'll see.
We'll see. Definitely some interesting offerings there. The last one we're going to talk about before we cut to break, we're going to close with Ubisoft. They had a press conference, and they divided up their press conference in a nice, neat, you know, here's the games we're putting out for this generation, then here are the games we're putting out for next gen. So with the current generation, they're putting out what looks like basically a rehash of Rock Band / Guitar Hero Rocksmith 2014.
Yeah, what exactly is that? I missed that one.
Basically, a Rock Band / Guitar Hero sort of type game.
It's just strange, because, I mean, I hate to say this because I used to love Rock Band, but that ship's kind of sailed. You know what I mean? Like, there's not really much demand. Well, obviously, you know, that they're not being made anymore, but, like, I don't know where the demand would be for that, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. I don't know either. Splinter Cell Blacklist. I've never played any of the Splinter Cell games. So.
Ditto.
Rayman Legends. One which I saw the trailer for, which was hilarious. The Mighty Quest for Epic Loot.
The title alone is amazing.
Yeah, just the title alone. It sounds like it has a sort of Bard's Tale sort of feel. You know, a quest for coin and cleavage. It's you know.
Yep.
And then of course the South Park: The Stick of Truth. I'm like, whoa, I haven't heard that name in a while.
The reason I haven't heard that in a while is because THQ was originally publishing, and then they went under, so all the properties had to be sold off and developed.
That's why.
Okay.
That's why I'm like, for some reason, because I didn't hear about it for so long, I actually thought it was already out, and I'm like, wait, huh? No, you're not out. Oh, okay. Did not know that.
Yeah, it was one of those things where like just because of THQ having all their bankruptcy issue and needing to sell everything off, that has to change hands, and then there's other implications that go along with it, legal problems, yada yada yada. So it's not totally surprising that we hadn't heard about that game for a little while.
Then they went into their next gen games. They opened up with a trailer for their own type of racing game called The Crew, which looks to be like a little bit sort of Grand Theft Auto-y. I'm like, okay, but it's a racing game. So, Watch Dogs.
Which looks epic.
It does. It looks very, very, very nice.
You know what Watch Dogs kind of reminds me of? Do you guys remember when the first Assassin's Creed was announced and they were talking about, like, beyond just graphics, this was going to constitute what, like, a quote-unquote next-gen game was supposed to be?
Yes.
Like, it wasn't just supposed to look better, it was supposed to, like, be a more intelligent system and play better and so on and so forth. I feel like Watch Dogs is this generation's Assassin's Creed, in that sense of it's kind of got some hopes of what quote-unquote next-gen gaming is going to be like thrust upon its shoulders. And I really hope it doesn't turn out the same way, because the original Assassin's Creed was pretty fun, but it was definitely not next-gen anything beyond visuals. So I hope Watch Dogs actually really does incorporate some cool new ways to play and to make you think about how you interact with a game world.
Especially because it's a new IP. I'm just like, come on. Please.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's all the same kind of connections, Except the difference is Watch Dogs could also be so much more relevant to the current world. Somebody created a meme at one point that they thought Prism was just some great viral marketing for Watch Dogs.
But this is a game I'm definitely keeping my eyes on.
Oh, same here, because I agree. I mean, it's enticing to see a game that looks like it could really, like, push the the ideas of what gaming could be.
It's like, oh my god, a new idea.
Yeah, exactly.
What? Kill it with fire.
Kill it with fire. No, we need 7 more sequels and reboots. Then, of course, we have Just Dance 2014. Now, my sister loves the Just Dance series. She has it for Wii, and just watching her play it is hilarious. It's kind of like watching me play DDR. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
We have Just Dance 2014. Rabbids Invasion, so good for all you ADD types.
Oh, I love Rabbids.
You would. You are the. I mean, because you have the attention span of a hummingbird, and and the Rabbids Invasion. Oh yeah, I could certainly see you jumping all over that.
I mean, I'm a big fan of, like, I liked all the other Raving Rabbids games. I love games like WarioWare and stuff like that. Those are definitely my type of games.
Yeah, when you are not suffering from allergies, you constantly have the persona of somebody who's had about 7 Red Bulls at any given moment.
Especially when I'm gaming.
Especially when you're gaming. It's like strong sad on decaf, but... Assassin's Creed 4, which has a lot of people's attention, which, I mean, I have not played any of the Assassin's Creed games, but I saw the trailer and I'm like, Pirates of the Caribbean?
They're fun, and I appreciate that the series at least has the ability and the execution to jump around at different points in history. That does bring something kind of unique to that franchise. You think about a lot of other games that have sequels don't have the ability to really do that. Fable is another example of a series that does a little bit of time skips, but not nearly to the same degree.
Yep.
And I think that's kind of cool that you can have similar core gameplay just explored in different places. I mean, you don't necessarily see that with a lot of other franchises, especially ones that are so, I guess, interactive or so based around interaction with your game world. You don't really see them changing the game world that often.
Right.
That's very true. I mean, because it gives each game, like, it's a very kind of easy way to make each game fresh.
Right.
You can continue sequels and continue using the core mechanics and the core storylines and the core themes of the game, but it's not like you're rehashing the same characters and, like, this, it makes the story blend a lot easier and not feel forced.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at, like, Brian, take any other franchise that you enjoy playing multiple games from, like Metal Gear or Mario or something. They don't. I mean, Mario has the ability, but they don't really necessarily. I mean, a little bit they play around kind of how worlds and things interact, but not to the same degree. I don't think you're still basically going to be jumping around the same kinds of worlds, the same kinds of interactions. Whereas at least here you're adding in, interactions with ships and naval battles and other fun stuff, in addition to all of the other sneaking and stealth and other cool parkour stuff that you've been doing.
There you go. Two more games. Something called Trials Fusion, and Tom Clancy's The Division, which is an open-world RPG.
That seems like such an oxymoron.
Given what we know of the Tom Clancy games to begin with, I'm just like, open world stealth RPG.
That's what makes it so interesting.
Didn't Sony tried to make an open, or at least an MMO stealth or shooting game called The Agency, I think, or something like that, which ended up languishing in development hell for a couple of years before being canceled. But I mean, it's an intriguing concept, but it doesn't sound like it's something that would be, I don't know, I feel like a giant world of
stealth.
People is
a world of ninjas.
Like, what was the kill count today? 5? Really? Yeah, we only had 5 people who could find each other and kill each other. Well, I guess they're all really good at the game. No, we're really bad at designing ways for them to find each other.
That would be a fun game to watch from the outside, though.
Sure, but
if you were able to actually watch the gameplay and watch all these people trying to sneak around each other, and
it could be interesting, but at the same time, my brain goes back to the memory of the boss battle with The End, and
sure,
and I'm just like, this is a bitch. Because we have a boss battle spread out over 5 different areas. Where is he?
And it takes a few hours to find where anybody is.
Yeah. Yep. So, but that's a bit of an interesting concept. So, we'll see how that plays out. So, we have covered the first 3 major press conferences. The second half, it's going to be Sony and Nintendo. Their offerings. I like the fact that Nintendo basically came out and said, yeah, we know why the Wii U is selling poorly, because we haven't made any games. I like that. It's honesty. Honesty at its finest. But that'll be on the second half. So, we'll cut out for a few minutes. You have some nice music to listen to, and we'll be back.